It can only be attributable to human error.
You're entering paranoid.
He meddled in things that you people want. He meddled in things. He meddled in
Where will we go next? This is phantom from another time.
No one, Mr. Mulder.
That's it, man. Game over, man. Game over.
That is one big pile of shit.
Hello, I'm Alex Daikaiju,
I'm Jasmine with
I'm Eli Watson.
and we are
Cryptid.
Campfire.
woohoo! Avast you mateys, welcome aboard.
Yes, we are back. And we are here today with another cryptid. Oh my gosh, who would have thought that we'd be talking about a cryptid on Cryptid Campfire? Isn't that crazy? This
Out of the
cryptid.
200 some episodes we've done,
Mhm.
we've talked about campfires most of the time. So
Honestly, a lot of national parks in there.
Yeah. But today's cryptid was actually recommended to us by one of our listeners, Jason Tapp. So he runs the Charlotte, North Carolina Spooky Culture Instagram account. That's at SpookyCLT. And he provided us with some of the information that we'll be sharing in today's episode. So shout out to you, Jason. I hope you enjoy this episode. Thanks for reaching out and giving us the suggestion. Jason has always known what?
go ahead. Don't say the name. Do not say the name.
Okay, I won't say the name yet. People have read the name in the title, but
It's okay.
I'll wait since clearly you want to do something with that.
Yes.
He's always known about this cryptid as being mostly an Appalachian folklore story, but in his research, he's found that it has had some surprising local ties to Charlotte, North Carolina as well. And honestly, we are not locked down to one geographical area at all for this episode. The legend is most closely associated with rural Appalachia and East Tennessee, but areas as far north as Idaho have also taken credit for its creation. For those of you who don't know, Appalachia is made up of 423 counties across 13 states and spans 206,000 square miles from southern New York to Mississippi. The region includes parts of Alabama, Georgia, Kentucky, Maryland, Mississippi, New York, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, and West Virginia. But as already mentioned, even states outside of that list have claimed sightings of today's cryptid, which we can now name, maybe.
Interesting. I'm pretty sure. Well, okay. One note. I'm pretty sure the Appalachian Mountains go all the way up into Maine.
Mm.
The mountains might, but
The region that's known as Appalachia
yeah,
is not.
yeah.
Let me take this opportunity to thank y'all for watching Cryptid Campfire and ask that if you enjoy our shows, please subscribe to our channel right now. Like this video and click on the bell so you can be notified each time a new video goes up. And now, back to the show.
I think you're right on the money. But anyways, yeah. So I have this little intro that I'm shamelessly stealing from a website that
Okay.
I just thought was fun, and I want to read it. Okay. Here we go. Strange things happen in the mountains at night. Deep down in the valleys, mysterious noises echo through the darkness. Terrifying howls travel from hill to hill. Something is roaming through the night. Animals disappear from farmyards. The random things left out in the yard at night, buckets, rakes, clothes hanging on a line, are knocked over or even destroyed. The folks who live in the hills hide in their homes. They know what it is. Whenever anything unusual happens in the night, whenever mysterious calls are heard, they say that it's the Wampus Cat.
The Wampus Cat, also known as the Galliwampus in Missouri and the Whistling Wampus in Arkansas.
Yeah, and Appalachia just keeps it nice and simple. Just Wampus.
Yeah, sometimes cat is completely removed and it is just called Wampus. I've already listed off a whole bunch of geographical stuff with this, but most sightings of the Wampus Cat have taken place in the deep mountain woods, but there have also been sightings in like cities as well, such as Chattanooga and Knoxville, Tennessee.
Wait, did you guys get actual sightings?
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because across my research, I just found vague reports of, in the 1920s and 30s news articles, there was sightings of a Wampus cat.
Yeah.
And then when I went to go find the article, it was behind a paywall. I said, well, the trail ends here, boys. Now we'll never know.
Well, I do have a couple of sightings that we can get into a little bit later, but I think we should first start with our common description, like what supposedly a Wampus cat potentially looks like. Descriptions vary per usual, but this could also be because we're talking about multiple different creatures that have all been assigned the same moniker. So what did you guys get for what a Wampus cat supposedly looks like?
I got that it looks like a large cat, either a panther or a cougar.
Mm-hmm.
Normally it's tan colored with glowing green eyes.
Interesting.
And yeah, because I came across reports of yellow eyes too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Some said green. And then the real kicker is it's got 6 legs.
Yeah.
There's an old saying in Conway, Arkansas, that the Wampus cat has 6 legs, 4 to run fast and 2 for fighting.
Yep. Interesting that you say tan fur because I've heard black fur. You already pointed out the multiple colors of eyes, enormous paws, large fangs, sometimes tiger-like stripes.
Oh, interesting.
I haven't come across that.
Yeah.
I got that it was somewhat aquatic.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
I found a quote that has that in it too, to where there's this folklorist by the name of Vance Randolph. I don't know if you came across him, Eli. Yeah. He describes the Wampus cat as a kind of amphibious panther which leaps into the water and swims like a colossal mink.
Yep.
That is interesting because I didn't come across anything about it being a swimmer of any kind.
No reports of swimming, and it's kind of an understatement for this creature too.
Yeah.
Because he left out one of the best parts. That at the end of its tail, some reports say it has like a club with spikes.
Oh, whoa.
Does it really?
Yeah.
I didn't come across that.
Yeah. So not only does it have 6 legs, it's got a clubbed tail with spikes on it.
I wish I would have known that.
Hey, you can incorporate it. I know where your mind's going. You can still use it.
I didn't come across that.
It's also rumored to have a terrible stench like so many other cryptids. Supposedly like a mixture of a skunk and a wet dog. In terms of like, because we're going to get into some sort of Native American legends in just a little bit. And in terms of that, I've also heard that the Wampus cat is sort of like a half cat, half woman, like half human creature. And that its eyes pierce the hearts and souls of those unfortunate enough to cross its path, driving them to the edge of sanity. So literally like looking into its eyes will drive you crazy.
Drive you mad.
Yeah.
Mad.
And then also Tennessee legend says that if you hear the Wampus cat's cry, it means someone is going to die and be buried within 3 days.
Whoa.
That's kind of like they say the banshee. I think in Ireland or Scotland, or if you hear the howl of a banshee, someone in the vicinity is going to die within like 3 days.
What exactly is a banshee? I'm going to Google this unless you can tell me.
Well, off the top of my head, they're usually like a ghost spirit, like a malicious spirit. Sometimes they look like a ghostly lady in the distance of a fog if it's in Scotland. But also I've seen people draw it like a severed head that just floats around screaming.
Interesting. Google says a banshee is an Irish legend, a female spirit whose wailing warns of an impending death in a house. So that's pretty on par with what we were just saying.
You know,
Yeah.
picture it's a giant cat with 6 legs screaming out the top of his lungs.
Oh man. So actually, before we get into sort of like some of the Native American legends and folklore, I wanted to talk a little bit about the etymology behind the term Wampus cat, because it is one of those terms that at times can act as a catch-all term rather than a specific creature. It's been used to describe multiple creatures at times. I'm not sure how much of this information you guys might have come across in your research or how much you took note of and wanted to share, but if you want to jump in with anything or stop me for any clarification, just let me know. The etymology behind the term Wampus cat derives from the term catawampus, which came about in the early 1800s. So this word had several meanings in different American dialects. So Merriam-Webster defines the noun form as an imaginary, unknown, fierce, wild animal, while its adjective form carries 2 different meanings. So it can mean fierce, savage, and destructive, or also askew, awry, or cater-cornered. As far back as the 1830s, it was used as an adverb to mean utterly and completely defeated. It's also a term that can be used to describe something that's just messed up, like just screwed up. This usage was noted by folklorists in the late 19th century as being a particularly North Carolina use of the word, but it has since spread more widely across the southeastern U.S. A 1917 publication called Dialect Notes equated the term catawampus or wampus with virago, which is a word used to describe a domineering, heroic, or aggressive woman, which that'll tie into some of the legends that we're going to talk about in just a minute. And then this one I found really interesting. According to 1977's Morris Dictionary of Word and Phrase Origins, published by HarperCollins, the word catawampus in its various forms may also have been used for intimidation purposes in the antebellum South. So slaveholders were said to have warned slaves against running away, else they encounter the catawampus cats that prowled and yelled in the woods at night. Former slave and abolitionist Frederick Douglass said in an 1857 speech, "There is something cowardly in the idea of disunion. Where is the wealth and power that should make us 14 millions take to our heels before 300,000 slaveholders for fear of being catawampishly chawed up?" Douglass uses the word in its adverbial form to mean utterly defeated, as mentioned earlier, and hints that this might have been a common idiom employed by slaveholders to enforce submission. Not a great background to find out about, but interesting nonetheless. And then
pretty wild, honestly.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but it does resemble the sort of legends that people tell to keep their children from running away or staying out late and things like that. Completely switching moods from that. Catawampus can also be related to the word catamount, which is just the regional name for the eastern mountain cougar species. All of these variations of the expression evoke a sense of chaos and ferocity, explaining why the term catawampus can kind of became a logical choice of name for a wild cat woman. And then sometime in the 20th century, the syllables were transposed and catawampus morphed into wampus cat. And then, as Alex mentioned at the top of this episode, sometimes just the term wampus is used specifically in the American South to describe any sort of mysterious animals or cryptids. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this next note later in the episode, but I have a quote here from Lauren Coleman that he wrote on his blog, which states, "I've found in old Southern newspaper accounts that Wampus was a name used for an unknown monster cat, as well as other mystery animals. It is very akin to how the name Booger was used, mostly for hairy unknown primates, habitat in that case, but sometimes for mystery panther haunts as well."
Have we mentioned the fact that they used to call Bigfoot's boogers?
Yeah, we've in a previous episode we've talked about that. I think I was the one who, I think we might have been interviewing somebody.
Yeah, it was.
You know what? It was Southern
Sean.
Fried Bigfoot. Yeah, it was Sean.
Yeah,
Alex, I don't think
but-
you were there, but
No,
I had
but-
made.
But Alex watched Southern Fried Bigfoot with me and Stefan, and
Mhm,
they
mhm.
used. We talked about booger quite a bit.
Yeah, and
that's right.
I had mentioned in the interview with Sean that I had never heard that term used before. But
Yeah.
I was just gonna say Bigfoot will come up later for some reason, but we're gonna talk about it in a little bit. It'll just be a quick side note later. But yeah, lots of background information on the term Wampus.
Yeah, and if I understand it correctly, say we're in North Carolina, and a guy meets his friend, and he says, "Hey, how's the new car?" And the car was unfortunately driven off the road and is totaled. So the guy says, "Totally catawampus." And he says, "Oh wow, what caused the accident?" And he actually saw a six-legged cat, so he said, "Totally catawampus." The answer that works for everything.
Yeah. Who wants to share some folklore?
Yeah, let's share it. Let's go from the least. I don't even know. It's all folklore. All right, let's do it. I'm ready.
Okay.
I'm sharing this story. We'll talk about it after. So once there was a beautiful Cherokee woman.
Mm-hmm.
Her husband was a hunter. As part of the tradition, the Cherokee hunters, before leaving for their hunt, would pray, seeking forgiveness for the animals they were about to kill and maybe getting some supernatural help along the way. Anyways, women were forbidden from seeing this go down, this ritual. However, this woman wanted to see it, so she covered her feet in cougar skin. Some also say that she wore a cougar skin jacket, or that she completely wore a cougar skin and snuck into the woods. And she hid behind a rock and watched the ceremony go down. But then her curiosity got the best of her. See, look, she's curious like a cat.
Hey.
So she decides to walk closer to the circle of men, and then she gets caught, and then the shaman, the witch doctor, is like, "I'm gonna put a curse on you," and made it so that what she was wearing, the cougar skin, became her actual skin, and she morphed into a semi-human proto-cougar animal known as the Wampus cat.
Yeah, that cougar pelt fused with her skin.
This is dubious. This
Yeah.
is a dubious folklore.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to say that earlier. I was going to say this is a dubious part of the folklore, but all folklore seems to be dubious when you can't confirm it. So,
Yeah. Well, we were saying before we started recording this that we think this legend, though it is a quote Cherokee legend, it might not actually come from the Cherokee people. It might just be a story that someone told about the Cherokee people for some reason at one point in time. It's not necessarily like a legend that was passed down by the Cherokee people.
It's a check on cryptid bingo. Is there a dubious legend attributed?
Yeah. But there is another Cherokee legend that we think might be more reputable. Is that the term I would want to use? A little more valid, perhaps?
Yeah.
Genuine, the real deal.
Yeah. Now the version of the story that I read had a lot of details and it was very like very narrative. So I don't want to necessarily read all of it verbatim. Do one of you have the same story but perhaps in a summarized or paraphrased version?
No.
No.
I just have that same version I think you have to where it's so
Okay.
long.
Okay. No worries. So basically, I won't read all of it, but I'll try and.
I can just try to summarize it for
You
you.
want to summarize it? Yeah, go ahead and summarize it
Sure.
because we all know what it is. It's just the matter of retelling it, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead. I think you're better
Well-
at that than I am.
Okay. Well, there was an evil demon called Awa, aka the Spirit of Madness, who had been terrorizing a village known as Etowah or Chota, depending on which version you hear. That is located in present-day North Carolina, if you were wondering. And so basically all the shamans and the war chiefs had a meeting and they were like, we need to send people out to go kill this thing because it is driving people insane.
It's in the
And
name.
yep.
I mean, this
And-
is where the legend of staring something in the eye is driving you crazy comes in.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess they agreed that instead of sending a bunch of people after it, they would send one dude after it. And that gentleman ended up being a man named Standing Bear, or sometimes called Great Fellow. And because he was the strongest, fastest, sneakiest, smartest, and most respected brave in all of the Cherokee Nation. And so he was chosen to do battle. The shamans blessed him. The war chiefs gave him weapons. And on the edge of the town, before he heads out on his epic quest, he says goodbye to his wife, Running Deer. Weeks go by, Running Deer and the rest of the tribe hears nothing of him. And then one night, Standing Bear comes back and he's screaming and he's clawing at his eyes and he looks absolutely insane. And right off the bat, Running Deer knew that her husband had gone insane.
Yep.
And I guess as the story goes, later on down the line, he was able to like pick berries and work in the fields, but he was gone. He was not the same.
Yeah.
And so
He'd gone mad. Wow.
he'd gone mad. And Running Deer had decided that she wanted revenge, which, hey, that's kind of, I feel for you, bro. And Running Deer went to the shamans, the shamans, and they gave her a booger mask or a bobcat's mask. And they told her that the spirit of the mountain cat could stand against the Awa. But she had to surprise the spirit. And so they gave her a paste that she rubbed on her body, which hid her scent. And then she kissed her former husband on the forehead. And he had no idea what was going on. And then
Oh, it's so sad.
it is terribly sad.
It's like a mice and men like quality sadness. It's like
It really
very,
is.
very poignant moment of like, the sorrow. I'm sorry, I can feel it. Oh.
So she leaves to go get her revenge. And so she's eating berries along the way. I guess these are all like details we don't need. But at one night, she heard a creature stalking the stream or by the stream, and she snuck up towards the creek and she heard a twig snap behind her and she spun, and lo and behold, it was just a fox. And she was like, I need to be more careful because if that had been Awa, I would have just went crazy right now.
Yeah.
But she continues towards the creek and she sees footprints, and her former husband's breastplate was laying at the edge of the water. And so she follows the prints upstream and she sees the demon, and it's lurched over the water drinking. And then she just creeps up to it and springs at it, scares it, and Awa spins around and sees the booger mask and begins to tear at itself, as the legend says, and it turned its magic back on itself. And so Awa tumbles backwards into the water, and Running Deer runs back home. and never looked back. And when she arrived home, she sang herself a song of grief for her husband, but joy for the demon's destruction. And the shamans and the war chiefs declared her Running Deer, the spirit talker and home protector. And so the legend is that the spirit of Running Deer inhabits the Wampus Cat, and she continues the mission of protecting the tribe's lands from the demons.
Yeah. As great as that story is, I don't understand it. Like, she just spooked it. Like yeah. I the mask, I guess, has some power, or what's going on here?
It's basically like, did you ever see Batman Begins, Jasmine?
Did I? Bale? Which Batman is that?
With Christian Bale and
Liam Neeson.
I'm sure I saw it at some point. I'm sure I saw it.
There's the villain, the Scarecrow, where he wears the mask and he always scares people with the gas and he causes mayhem and he causes terror. But the minute it's put back on him, he's like the biggest baby in the world. So you have this spirit of madness that drives men mad with its eyes. But the minute it gets a little spooked by itself, it pees itself and falls back in the water.
Well, it turns its magic back on itself, so it ends up driving itself crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Is it like looking in a mirror? Is that what's happening?
Or maybe it's like, I'm rubber, you're glue. Whatever you say bounces off of me, sticks back to you.
Like, I know that the mask isn't actually a mirror, but is that essentially what's happening?
Maybe because the magic needs to hit an eye, and so if it doesn't hit an eye, it just bounces back.
I guess so.
Maybe. Also, the demon was drinking water, which raises many questions.
Demons got to drink. They need to stay hydrated.
Yeah, stay hydrated. This is a threat. I have, this is a callback to the opening of when we were talking about the episode. I know where the tail comes from, the spiky part.
Okay.
It's from Clark Fork, Indiana. That's where the legend of a ball-like formation of at the end of a tail, seemingly covered in sharp quills or spikes. So we get that from Indiana.
Is it the Hodag that had a tail like that as well?
I think the Hodag had more of like a spiky dinosaur tail with like a hook at the end.
I really don't remember. I have one more origin of the Wampus Cat.
Oh, this is the secret one that you found.
This is the secret one as told by our good friends at the Cryptid Wiki.
Someday someone from Cryptid Wiki is going to reach out to us and be like, yo,
hire us. We'll write it for you.
I don't care. Do it. So, origin of the Wampus Cat. I'm going to read this quote word for word. On the authority of the mountain men of Stanley Basin, dates back to the beaver, old-fashioned. It seems that, yeah, that's the sentence. It seems that a trapper's dog surprised a beaver far from water, and there was nothing for the beaver to do but to climb a tree. But beavers cannot climb trees. So the beaver becomes the Wampus Cat.
What?
Are we talking about a forced evolution here?
Is
that the end?
That's the story.
Yeah.
The beaver just adapted in that moment and became a Wampus cat.
Yeah. It's the most stunning scientific discovery of this century. Beavers, when deprived of water and no place to hide, completely evolve into another entire species.
That sounds about right.
I would like to share this other interesting fact from the Cryptid Wiki about Wampus cats that you guys probably did not run across.
Okay.
So keep in mind, this is the beginning of the paragraph. Once the Wampus Cat is lured to the bailiwick of the wicked Salmon River Eagles, The quick-witted Wampus Cat swiftly eradicated the fowls of the air, and not sparing the wild turkeys planted there. The Wampus Cat knows the eagle, but trouble is I'm so sorry. But trouble oh my God. But trouble is anticipated when the eagle and the turkey cross into a new species known as the Turk eagle. And that the Wampus Cat cannot tell them apart because it cannot spell.
What? I'm
I'm done.
literally so confused. What at all did you just say?
Don't know. I don't even know.
Good lord.
It's so good.
That was like something written by Thomas Harris. It was amazing.
I feel like I was just in a fever dream. Like, what? Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. That was a good laugh. And we appreciate every piece of information that we gather from the Cryptids Wiki.
Yeah. God bless them. They do their best, but the Wampus Cat can't spell for the life of it.
A lot of cryptozoological creatures lack common educational skills, apparently. The Wampus Cat can't spell, the Rougarou can't count. Past 13 or 12 or whatever it is.
Past 12, yeah.
The poor SOB.
Oh man. Well, do you guys want to get into some sightings next?
Yeah, lay it down on us.
Cool.
Oh, sure. I have a couple more things.
Origin stories?
Yeah?
They're not necessarily origin stories, but I'll just lay it on you as they've been presented to me. Did you know that the Wampus Cat lives in Idaho and its scientific name is Aquila maprilundens forcipae? The Wampus Cat was first seen and introduced since the first specimen of the Wampus Cat is discovered scratching false blazes on mountain trails, and because of that, the Wampus Cat is blamed for a variety of forest tribulations. Females can only be killed with a crosscut saw, and the males are practically, but not completely, indestructible with the germ of blister rust in their fur.
Is this also from the Cryptids Wiki?
I'm so sorry. It doesn't get old. It's just their footprints are only visible in solid rock. The Wampus Cat steals prospectors.
Wait, what? How is a footprint visible on solid rock?
It's where they're only visible. Maybe they can manipulate energy.
Maybe they have sweaty palms from having 6 arms.
The glare from their eyes is said to start forest fires under the full moon's influence. The Wampus Cat steals prospectors' picks to brush their teeth.
Mm-hmm.
If the Wampus Cat wades in a stream, the fish won't bite for a week.
I think some creative liberties were definitely taken here.
Well, the Wampus, and here's my final one. Actually, I really have one more. Please let me say this. The simple solution to getting rid of a Wampus Cat was created by what's known as the Wampus Society.
Oh.
And in parentheses, named after the Wampus Cat, as if we couldn't gather that one.
I would really hope so.
And it's composed of every human, regardless of male and female gender and age, who has seen the rampant Wampus Cat at dusk, menacing and threatening cougars with jackhammers.
I'm sorry. I'm very confused.
Basically,
this sounds like a society that you don't have choice about being inducted to. Like,
yeah. it's like the Shriners or the Masons. They like forcibly induct you if you happen to see a Wampus Cat with a jackhammer harassing cougars. They can't spell, but they can use power tools.
And that's it.
Okay. So, all right. Let's and very entertaining. It's gonna get weird later too. Like everything about this cryptid is pretty weird. Even some of the newspaper articles that I'm about to read, they're weird. The verbiage is weird. The word choice is weird. But to start this off with just some general information, Early pioneers visiting the South went back east with all sorts of tales of terrifying beasts and swamp creatures that they had allegedly encountered in the woods and waters of the region. And among these creatures was the Wampus cat, which was reported to roam the southern bottomlands and described as an impossibly hideous critter said to have the head of a man, the body of a wild cat, only larger, and the soul of a demon. So
now they're just getting judgy.
I know. So one Wampus cat encounter was recounted by S.E. I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correctly or not, Schlosser, in their book Spooky South. The story goes that during the turn of the 20th century, there was a hunter by the name of Jinx Johnson. Did you guys read about Jinx?
No.
I did not, but I really regret.
So Jinx Johnson was a hunter who lived on the West Virginia border. And he was out one night with his dogs. And, quote, he would soon find that the Appalachians were not very welcoming after all. So basically what happened is he's out hunting. His dogs begin to whimper. They feel like something's off. You know how dogs can kind of sense when there's like danger around or things are awry. So they whimper and they run off the path. What?
You mean
Why are you looking
awry?
Did I say that word wrong?
Wait,
Ari.
Ari.
It's AWRY, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it's a rye, yeah.
Ari.
I like Ari more.
Ari.
Things went Ari. Things went Ari real fast.
I'm very likely wrong, but I also feel like I've heard it pronounced that way before. It's definitely a rye.
It's probably
It could be
your
Ari
crazy.
sounds like a word too, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's your crazy Ohio accent.
Well,
It
it
might
could
be.
be. It could be like lawyer or lawyer. You know, that just depends on where you live.
Like-
Yeah,
Yes.
lawyer.
Potato.
Disregarding my mispronunciation of simple words, his dogs begin to whimper and run off the path. And then suddenly he was hit by a putrid odor, like an animal had been sprayed by a skunk and then fell into some water. It was just stinky.
Ew.
And so then our friend Jinx heard something howl behind him, and he turned around quickly, dropped his rifle, found himself face to face with a black cat-like beast with big glowing yellow eyes and saliva dripping from large fangs.
Mm.
He described the creature as looking like a mountain lion, but it had been standing on its hind legs. So that was one of the things that I neglected to mention when we were talking about the description at the top of the episode. It has been known to like stand erect and like walk on its hind legs, whether it be 4 or 2 or however many legs it has. It like stands up. And the beast howled and Jinx runs away. You know, fight or flight kicks in. He turns around, he runs away. And as he's running through the forest trying to escape, he can feel the breath of the beast on his neck as it chases him through the woods. He ends up at a friend's house just in the nick of time, slams the door shut behind him, and his friend and him hold the door shut as the creature tried to get in. I'm still laughing at Arai.
I'm still laughing at jackhammers.
Eventually, the Wampus cat gives up its attack and wanders back into the woods. So Jinx spends the night at his friend's house and in the morning finds his dogs cowering in the nearby barn. And after that experience, Jinx Johnson never hunted at night again.
Wow.
So I don't know where that story comes from. That's kind of like your typical,
Your classic.
well, I heard
cryptid
about
story.
Yeah, I heard that. Did you ever hear about that guy Jinx? I think, you know, whatever. But
Jinx Johnson Jackson.
yeah, Jinx Johnson. But as dubious, that's one of our favorite words lately. As dubious as this story is,
Makes it sound fancy.
there are some actual newspaper articles that have sightings attributed to the Wampus cat. So
No way.
I'm going to share some of them. And these come directly from Jason Tapp, who I mentioned at the top of the episode. I emailed him to let him know that we were doing a Wampus cat episode and that we were taking one of his suggestions. And so he sent me over some PDFs that I could read.
Wow.
So In the Piedmont of, God, I hope I'm saying that right now. Is Piedmont, North Carolina, correct?
Yeah, Piedmont. Yeah.
In the Piedmont of North Carolina. I doubt my ability to speak English anymore. Since the 1890s, there have been sightings of a large cat-like creature whose appearance has been known to shapeshift to other terrifying forms. Reports of a creature that could kill livestock, along with full-grown hounds which were guarding them. Farmers, townspeople, and even priests noted a blood-chilling howl, not of this earth, in the evenings when the autumn sun's shadow stretched long over the ground. And in 1911, it was reported that the Wampus was dreaded more than Satan by the children around Clarkston, Georgia, due to the rash attacks of that year. So let's get into an actual article. I thought that's what I was just reading, but it's not. That was more of an intro.
Okay.
The Charlotte Observer from North Carolina in March of 1916 reported this.
Oh.
Special Agent John Pittman of the Seaboard is of the opinion that he has uncovered a wampus, or if not that highly interesting animal, at least a blood relation. As to the size of his discovery, Officer Pittman is extremely modest. And this is where it kind of gets a little tricky with just like word choice. I read this multiple times to make sure that I was writing down the correct words. So even though the sentences don't always make sense to me, this is what they say, despite the fact that I've been doubting my ability to speak English for this episode so far. This is what these articles say. It says, his was no fang displaying, shaggy coated, 4-foot high quadruped who makes a quick lunch off a flock of sheep and mops up takes in the neighborhood dogs as an entree. The unknown, which crossed his patch last night, was only a little larger than a cat, but he was a strange species. And then it kind of makes note that he's familiar with other animals like possums, raccoons, weasels, groundhogs, and that's not what this was. It goes on to say, under the electric light at the intersection of 5th Street and the railroad, he examined the night prowler for 5 minutes and files a report along with 2 other affidavits by examiners of the stranger that he is not indigenous to these parts. In an endeavor to substantiate his declaration with the living, breathing goods, says the officer, he attempted to hold the varmint down with a stick until a bag could be secured. If you don't, this is one of my favorite sentences from this article. If you don't believe that quadruped, God, I'm tripping over my words. If you don't believe that quadruped ? Could bite, examine the stick, because Mr. Pittman has it on display. The research work concluded when the object of examination decided to retire to its lair beneath the Armor Packing Company's headquarters building, a retreat which was made to the accompaniment of an ineffective revolver shot. It had dark brown fur like a squirrel, but its tail was more like a possum's, declared Mr. Pittman with conviction. And that's the end of that. Is it like the word choice? Like the word choice to me is so interesting.
It's very old school. Very
I
old
almost
school.
knocked over my mic.
It's like the equivalent of just like, oh, then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. It's just like, oh my God, it just keeps going.
Yeah.
They're holding the critter down with a stick, trying to find a bag.
Yeah.
And then they shoot at it, but it misses.
Yeah.
A couple years later, right? Yeah, this was 1916. A couple years later, in 1918, the Greenville Daily Sun, which is from Tennessee, reported this. A wampus is reportedly roaming the big ridge in the vicinity of Gethsemane. And a few days later, the Sun asked the question, how many of you have actually seen the wampus you hear talked about on the streets every day? Further down,
cats have you seen?
Further down the column, it's reported that parents are telling us that they are experiencing less trouble keeping their children in after dark since the report gained circulation that the wampus had been seen here. And so in the 20s and the 30s, newspapers, this is, I think, the quote that you said earlier, Alex, about how there's this general statement that in the 20s and 30s, newspapers reported wampus cat killings against livestock in North Carolina, Georgia, and Tennessee. But there is a possibility that that was just due to early intrusions of coyotes and other animals and things like that. But the deaths were attributed to the Wampus cat. I've got a couple more to share. Jump in at any time if you feel the need to, guys. Otherwise, I'm just gonna keep rolling through these because I found quite a few good stories that I'm excited to share. I've got just one or two more.
Sure.
Yeah.
So a couple years into the Prohibition, the Barnes brothers were in their early 20s. So these guys are named Dewey and Olin, and they were crushing on two Yankee gals who were learning how to be ladies at Greensboro College in North Carolina. And one Saturday night, the brothers went up to the dorm with a ladder and snuck out the women to go for a joyride. And they ended up camping off Owl's Roost Road near Summerfield, where they lit a fire and sampled Olin's homemade moonshine.
Nice.
They also had a dog with them named Eustace, who was a hunting dog.
Eustace.
And the dog took off into the dark, into the woods after a rabbit. They called for him to come back, which he did fast and making a noise like the devil was right behind him. So the dog jumps into the jalopy and burrows under the seat, and everyone laughs until they spot something crouched at the rim of the firelight, which that actually sounds terrifying, for there to be something crouched like right by your fire. They said it was like an enormous cat, black as night and as big as a donkey, with eyes like coals and teeth like the size of railroad spikes. So the girls screamed. They all got into the car and peeled out of there. But even over the sound of the engine and the gravel and the dog barking, they could still hear the devil cat howling louder than the women.
Whoa.
And that's that story. The most recent sort of Wampus cat story that I could find comes from like a decade ago. I don't exactly know what year it would have been. The article I read was a couple years old, and it used the term around a decade ago. So I don't know the exact year that this might have happened, but there's a woman named Lynn Buchanan who says that she was a passenger on a trip to the Outer Banks, North Carolina, about a decade ago. And she glimpsed something just off the stretch of Interstate 64 that crosses the Alligator River and runs through the Alligator River National Wildlife Refuge. At first, she thought it was just a bear or a huge dog, but she said, as I looked closer, I saw what it was. Although my mind refused to believe it, there couldn't possibly be a black panther roaming the coastal plains of North Carolina.
Or could there?
I think there's been reports. I think we mentioned that at some point briefly, right? Reports of black panthers. I think there is. Not that they're actually real or they exist, but there's reports of black panthers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you know what? I actually got a firsthand account of that when I was doing Chasing Legends up in Vermont.
Yeah.
And we ended up talking to this couple that had seen Champ like a week before we showed up and had photoed it or whatever. And they were helping us. They got us kayaks for our night investigation. And there wasn't enough kayaks for everybody. So I was on the shore for a little bit. And I was just talking to him. And he was talking to me and Alex Pedikov. Because Alex had made a movie about mountain lions on the East Coast called Lions of the East. Because according to the government, mountain lions aren't out that far east anymore. But there's a lot of sightings.
Yeah.
So we just asked him casually, like, what do you think about mountain lions being out here? And he said, oh yeah, they're here. And he said, the weirdest part about it is that out here, they're black. Mic drop.
Interesting.
Whoa.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Crazy. Wow. Who knows?
So do you want to hear about Bigfoot and how it's involved with the Wampus cat?
I've been waiting all day.
Yeah.
Have you? So I don't understand this connection. I don't see why you would call a Bigfoot type creature any sort of cat. But it has happened, and it was happening in 1964. So in the spring of 1964, there were a number of reports of an ape-like creature roaming the woods near Dean's Crossroads, located on US 70, about halfway between Smithfield and Princeton, and this is again in North Carolina. Multiple people had reported seeing an 8-foot tall, hairy ape man roaming the woods. So the news called the animal a Wampus cat, and the name stuck. I don't know why. It doesn't make sense to me that you would call an ape-like creature a cat in any sense. But anyway, hundreds of people flooded the small town searching for the beast until the sheriff was forced to call off the hunt, fearing for public safety and declaring the whole thing to be a hoax. Now, I read that information from one source and then found an article that I think is referring to that story. So May 14th, 1964, this comes again from the Charlotte Observer. Now, I will note at the beginning of the article, they say Johnston County, and at the end of the article, they say Johnson County. I don't know if there's supposed to be a T or if there's not supposed to be a T, because it says both in the article. So there's a typo somewhere. But the article says the following. Johnston County residents, 500 strong, have been combing the wooded Williams Mill Crossroads section for a creature bearing all the earmarks of a genuine Wampus cat. The sheriff's department has made pursuers put away their rifles and shotguns, and in general, officials poo-pooed the whole business.
Oh.
No animals have been killed, no property has been damaged, no one has been attacked, said Sheriff Howard Olive Jr. But reports are flying that a creature variously described as a gorilla, an 8-foot man with a scarred face, and a monster with big feet is stalking the countryside. The creature was reported on the prowl in Goldsboro, 25 miles from here. James Holloman called Goldsboro... James Holloman...
What just happened?
James Holloman called Goldsboro police at 1:42 a.m. Wednesday to report that a big man with great big feet was in a field near his home. Police couldn't find anything. Wally Strickland of Smithfield, Route 2, said he saw a monster like a 10-foot gorilla stalk the highway near Williams Mill. Early Tuesday night, a report circulated that the creature was eating at a picnic table at Holt Pond between Smithfield and Goldsboro. This reminds me, I don't know why, just the image of like a Bigfoot-like creature sitting at a picnic table reminds me of, oh gosh, what are they called? The ones who eat apples?
It starts with an M, right?
I don't know. We did an episode on them, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. The Albit Witch.
Albit Witch, yes.
Albit Witch, yes.
Okay, yep. Between Smithfield and Goldsboro, about 500 residents of Johnson County showed up with rifles, shotguns, and knives. Sheriff Olive made them take the weapons home and said he hoped the people would stay home too. Now, it says, a Wampus cat, as any farm boy knows, is more imagined than real. I would think that's where the article would end, but they add one more sentence, which just seems so random to me. It says, it also, so it is said, runs at a 45-degree angle instead of straight ahead like a non-Wampus cat.
That's like when it's like you're doing a school paper and you have to do like 500 words and you're at 450. And in conclusion, as per what I just said in the last paragraph, to sum up what I'm really trying to say in this paper, it can run at a 45-degree, not unlike.
That's almost like the equivalent of like a really good story happening, and then you're just like, just kidding, it was all a dream.
Well,
psych.
It wasn't all a dream, but there was a proven Wampus cat hoax about 20 years prior to that story in 1944. Did you read about this?
No. Whoa. I didn't. You're digging up all this secret history. We're calling this episode The Secret History of the Wampus Cat.
So in 1944, there was commotion in the neighborhood because there were odd tracks being found in weird strands of hair ending up in like fences, and nobody could figure out what was going on. But what was going on was there was a farmer identified as Burton Hildebrand who was actually caught making impressions on the soft mud of a creek bank with cow hooves attached to a pair of sticks. And then he was leaving horsetail hairs in fences. And he later admitted that he had concocted the scare in order to create some excitement in the neighborhood. Now, how that relates to like wampus cats, because like cow hooves, wow, I keep knocking my mic over today. Cow hooves don't look like cat paw prints, in my opinion. So this is kind of another one of those weird, they use the term wampus cat, but it's not actually cat-like at all, and we're just using it to describe a mysterious unknown creature, so more so of a wampus than a wampus cat. Like, take out the cat part. I don't know.
I'm really confused. So his idea of a hoax was to hoax cow prints.
Well, the people weren't. I don't know what else might have been on the cow print, because the prints that had been found previously looked strange to people. Like, they didn't just look like cow hooves. So he had the cow hooves attached to these sticks, I'm assuming, and then there was probably some other element that just hasn't like been identified or described, you know?
Or you take the cow hoof and you put like 2 to 3 next to each other, so it looks like a
he
cow,
might have done
like
something like that.
Oh yeah,
cat print or
okay.
something, but a big size, but it looks like a hard hoof or something.
You know what? That's valid. That's valid. That's probably what it was. That makes a lot of sense, actually. Yeah.
It's always a prankster.
There is always a prankster.
Because I was just like, anyone walking by would have just been like, oh, look, a cow walked here.
Yeah.
Like,
That's
Look at
what,
these,
yeah.
these strange cow prints, and it looks like a horse walked through here because it's a horsetail hair that's been caught. Like,
That makes a lot of sense. Did you guys have anything else that you wanted to share about sightings, legends, conspiracies, or anything like that before we get into sort of maybe explanations? Specifically, I think we're going to be talking about something Eli already mentioned about the existence or non-existence of cougars being in the East.
Oh.
I will just say that, just throw this out. Could you imagine if every response to a cryptid sighting was like the one where 500 people showed up with rifles, pistols, and knives? The Patterson Gimlet film comes out, and they're like, oh my God, 500 people just start going through Bluff Creek with guns.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was going to say the only problem with Bluff Creek is that it's technically Native American land where that film is. So they probably wouldn't take too kindly to like 500 white people showing up with guns. Like,
I don't think that.
We're looking for Sasquatch.
Oh, man. So when it comes to explanations, usually, like in a typical episode, we have like sort of a list of, well, it could be this misidentified creature, or it could be this scientific experiment gone wrong, or it could be this paranormal whatever. This one, aside from the Native American legend explanations that we talked about at the beginning of the show, there's really only one thing that I came across, and the most common explanation for wampus cat sightings is that they are remaining, thought to be extinct, East North Carolina cougars / mountain lions. So, fun fact for those who didn't know, because I didn't, cougars and mountain lions are the same thing. I didn't know that, but now I do. Before, did you want to share anything, Eli, about that more? You talked a little bit about it when you were mentioning that you had been talking to someone about it during Chasing Legends, but I have just like a list of facts about how they were common in North Carolina at one point, and then they weren't, and the conspiracy behind all of that.
Well, yeah, they used to be all over the East Coast, and in fact, I mean, they technically still are. I mean, they call it the Florida Panther, but it's the same. It's they did a DNA test and it's legit the same
Yeah,
as a
so there
cougar.
were 11, just touching on that, there were 11 subspecies of cougars native to North America, but only 2 of them, the eastern cougar and the Florida cougar, were found east of the Mississippi River. And today, only a handful of Florida cougars still survive in southern Florida. And most biologists believe that the native eastern cougar has been extinct for many years.
Yes, that's what they say. But a lot of people say that is not the case. So
Yeah. So early records of North Carolina mammals indicate that the eastern cougars populations declined throughout the 18th century as a result of persecution, hunting, loss of habitat, and the parallel decline of its major prey species, the white-tailed deer. And so it's thought that by 1900, the eastern cougar was, I'm not going to botch this word, and I'm just going to say gone, because I'm not going to embarrass myself again.
what's the word?
Extinct?
No, extirpated? Is that,
Yeah.
is that how you say it?
Yeah,
extirpated?
extirpated.
Throughout North Carolina. But as Eli has mentioned, sightings of cougars and their tracks are still reported occasionally in parts of the East, including North Carolina. But upon investigation, these sightings and tracks often prove to be that of other animals such as bobcats, coyotes, dogs, or black bears. And some of the cougar sightings made in recent years may have been captive animals that had escaped or were illegally released in the East. No tangible evidence exists that wild cougars currently exist in North Carolina. They're only in zoos, but that's where the whole escaped animal, illegally released animal argument comes into play. And we already mentioned that they can be seen in the Florida Everglades, but they can also be seen in the western part of the US and in Mexico and parts of Canada. But it's interesting to note that cougars are so secretive that even in parts of the American West where they are still quite common, many people live their entire lives without seeing one. And so I think this whole argument is very interesting because it's a real animal. You know, the eastern cougar is not a cryptid. It's potentially attributed to cryptid sightings because of this whole Wampus Cat legend. But I think it's just really funny because the eastern cougar existed. Now it supposedly doesn't. People still claim they see it. And I literally read a statement that says, and this is from, where is it from? Let me scroll up in my notes real quick so that I can get,
I mean, that is a cryptid though. What you just described. Yeah.
But it's not, but a cryptid is a non-proven animal. You know what I mean?
No. Well, like, what about a thylacine? That was real.
Right. And it's not a cryptid.
But it is a cryptid. That's the definition. Yeah.
Anyways, what I'm trying to get at here, the point that I'm trying to make is it made me laugh when I was reading this information from North Carolina Wildlife.org, I think.
You're the one telling us.
Yeah. And ncwildlife.org. The statement says this, and it's not that compelling. I just think it's funny. It says, domestic cats and dogs, coyotes, bobcats, and red foxes infected with mange are the most common animals mistaken for cougars. And that just cracks me up because that's the common explanation for other cryptids. Like El Chupacabra is just a coyote with mange. And here we are saying, no, eastern cougar, animal with mange.
Yeah.
Like, it just cracks me up.
Are you sure people aren't, misseeing beavers out there?
Yeah, that's my running theory, is that the beaver needed to climb the tree.
I totally forgot about that story, and I was thinking to myself, what is Alex talking about? Why is he bringing up beavers? What does that have to do with anything? But yeah, I was thinking about beavers earlier. That's funny. Was there anything else though with like other explanations? Did you guys come across any paranormal or supernatural conspiracies?
No.
Not surprisingly, for something as viable as the Wampus Cat, there's pretty good history there. There's a lot of weird elements, but there's none of that classic conspiracy. Oh, there's the research facility in West Virginia where they've been pumping out mutant cats, or or not even the interdimensional window follower.
Yeah. Well, that's a really good segue actually for our next sort of section where we talk about pop culture, because pop culture be popping for the Wampus Cat, okay? And based off of the whole like experiment conspiracy that you just mentioned, Alex, there's a book that kind of involves that. So H.G. Wells uses a cinnamon.
A cinnamon.
I'm done. I'm signing off, guys. I'm finished for the day. I'm out. Goodbye. Finish the podcast without me. No. Good Lord. Synonym of catawampus. So at the top of the episode, I mentioned the word virago, which is used to describe a character in his classic novella about vivisection, which is the practice.
Island of Dr. Moreau, right?
Huh? Yeah. Yes. Have you read it?
Yes.
Amazing. So real quick, the definition of vivisection is the practice of performing operations on live animals for the purpose of experimentation or scientific research. And it is called The Island of Dr. Moreau. And Alex has read it. Alex, tell us about it and the Puma Woman.
Okay. All right. Well, it's been a while, but The Island of Dr. Moreau starts with a guy being washed up on a beach from a shipwreck. And he's on this island and he meets some people and they're a little weird, a little strange. And he learns that there's a doctor on the island, Dr. Moreau, who used to be a very prolific doctor in London at the turn of the century, but there's some controversy around his scientific experiments, so he fled the country. And now he's here on an island, and the whole crux is he's been experimenting on animals, turning them into people. And so he's been changing limbs, doing facial reconstruction, and one of the experiments is the Puma Lady, to where I think she's probably. Here's where my mind gets foggy, because there's movie versions and there's the novel version.
Okay.
And they kind of trade things off. So if I remember correctly, most of the animal human people, like, they look, a little off. They look kind of human, but a little strange. And the ones who are like way more animalists, who look like animals, live off in the deep forest. Okay. And then there's a lady who's silent, and she has green eyes. She has dark hair, and she's always kind of in a separate room. I think Dr. Moreau is always kind of keeping the narrator away from her. And then it turns out that, well, she's a Puma Lady, and I think she still has her teeth when she opens up her mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And then through a bunch of series of misadventures and questions about what is it to be a man, what is it to be a human, the animal people revolt, and they I think they light the island on fire and they kill Dr. Moreau.
Oh my God.
Wow.
I think, yeah.
Something like that happens. This summary says that the Puma Woman and the doctor mutually kill each other.
Okay. Yeah, there's one version to where, like, I think there's this crazy 90s version where it's Marlon Brando as Dr. Moreau.
Oh man.
But he's in like a white dress for most of the movie.
What?
And he has his face like painted like a clown, like white makeup, like just pure white. And he wears these like tiny glasses, and he wears a bucket on his head. And then they hired an actor who I forget the guy's name, but he was like the shortest man in the world. He was like 2 feet something, and they have him dressed just like Marlon Brando, and he hangs out with him.
What in the world?
It's you guys got to see it. And there's this amazing documentary, because the movie was being made by this British director who had made a couple indie movies, and they're like, all right, do the Island of Dr. Moreau. So they went down, I think, to like South America to film it. things start going wrong. It's like Apocalypse Now, just production problems. He's getting freaked out. He's like an indie director doing his first big budget. He starts drinking, and then just one day he's gone. He wanders off into the forest, and they never see him again. And so they call in another director to finish this movie. And then
No way.
yeah, and they're there for months filming this nightmare of a movie.
What in the
And then
world?
and then it turns out that they find the original director, and he's been living in the forest.
You know what that reminds me of? Tropic Thunder.
Yeah. I think it's called, so it's Island of Dr. Moreau's the movie, and I think the documentary is called The Island of Lost Souls.
Mm.
And it's about one guy's journey to make the movie and everything that went wrong. Just
Well-
fantastic.
Well, because the island, well, I don't know. The documentary could be called that, because then there's the Island of Lost Souls, the
With,
old
I think-
movie.
With Bela Lugosi, I think, right? Or
Yeah, with
Lon
Bela-
Chaney.
No, it's Bela Lugosi.
Yeah.
And they market him as like the big, like it's Bela Lugosi in the Island of Lost Souls, and he's in like 2 scenes.
Yeah.
as one of the dudes who lives way out in the forest. So
Yeah, and he's under a bunch of makeup too, so you can't even see him.
yeah, you can't.
But yeah, I love H.G. Wells' Dr. Monroe, and he even makes a cameo in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, the comic.
Yeah, he does. Which I didn't understand the reference at the time, but now looking back, I'm like, oh yeah, that's actually cool. Just
It
like
hits
everything
crazy,
else
right?
in that book.
Right? Go read the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, everyone. It's good.
What other fun things did you guys pick up on for pop culture? What are some of the modern
Wampus
day
Cat
uses?
Music Festival. It's a 3-day festival experience. 3
Really?
stages of music of multiple genres. It's going on this year.
Oh,
Let me look it up.
Yeah.
Wampus Cat.
Where's this place happening?
well, you
It's in
looked
North
that
Carolina.
up. Well, what the heck, man? That makes so much sense.
I was thinking
Let's
it was
see.
going to be in Ohio.
All right, here we
Yeah.
go. I got it. It's on-site camping and parking, 3-day multi-genre music festival, 2022. Headliners are the band Everclear, Sister Hazel, and Lit. Ever heard
Wait,
of any of them?
Lit?
What was the
Just
first one?
Everclear.
That actually does sound
Sound
familiar.
yeah.
I think I know who Lit is too. I think they're like a late 90s, early 2000s, like alternative band.
Yeah, I'm not.
Everclear is a rock band, so
There's a whole lot of names for it. They list everyone. I don't know anyone on this list, but the
Gotcha.
one that catches my eye is the Gasoline Gypsies.
oh,
So I might check them out, but it's May 13th through 15th on Gross Farms 2, 3345 Rosser Pittman Road, North Carolina.
see you there. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Gross
Um,
Farms too. So good they made another.
Speaking of
Gross.
music, there was an ensemble consisting of 6 or 7 string musicians, including Oscar Buddy Woods, who recorded several tracks in 1937 and 1938, and they were billed as the Wampus Cats.
Really?
Yeah.
Wampus Cat Band. There's a brewing company in Virginia that brews a beer named after the Wampus Cat. Did you have
Mhm.
this one, Eli? Or
Mm-mm, mm-mm.
no? Okay. You
No.
you looked at me. You looked at your computer like you want to say something.
No.
Anyways, I like the beer's description. So it says Legend of the Wampus Cat, spawned in Appalachia from Cherokee Indian folklore, depicts a half woman, half mountain lion that reportedly walks on hind legs and has 4 additional sharp clawed appendages. This creature from American folklore, along with Strange Ways Triple IPA, share the predestined ability to drive people crazy. Attempts at courage will likely be futile, as glowingly hypnotic eyes and an astounding 7 different hop varietals wield their dominance and potency. First in the Annihilation series, Wampus Cat Triple IPA should be treated with utmost caution if the rare fortune to confront one presents itself. That's a fun time.
If there's one word I want associated with drinking or eating, it's annihilation.
Annihilation.
Yeah. Alex mentioned at the beginning of the episode that a lot of educational institutions use it as their mascot. There's high schools in Idaho, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas, and Louisiana that all use the Wampus Cat as their mascot. And the six-legged one is at Conway High School in Arkansas.
Yeah, he's a shul mascot.
Eli, do you have any? I still have two more that I want to mention, but do you have any pop culture you want to bring up? No? Okay. J.K. Rowling's Pottermore story, History of Magic in North America, lists the Wampus Cat as a source for hair used in magic wands. The American School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, Ilver. I should have looked this up. Some word in the Harry Potter universe. Has also named one of its 4 houses for the mythical beast. Mythical beast. I'm wearing a shirt.
Wow.
I'm wearing a shirt that says mythical beast for anybody who's listening to this rather than watching it.
Yeah, that was wild. You just started shouting.
Yeah, I know.
He's like, people are like, why does she keep repeating mythical beast? Shout out Good Mythical Morning and Rhett and Link. And then lastly, the last thing I wanted to mention regarding Wampus Cat pop culture is it's a monster for Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition in their source book Tome of Beasts. The Wampus Cat appears as a female mountain. These Wampus Cats appear as female mountain lions with the heads of human, orc or goblin women, and are created through curses leveled by shamans upon women who practice forbidden magic, which that kind of draws information from that other legend we were talking about, practicing forbidden magic, spying on the forbidden rituals, and being cursed. So possessing the ability to enthrall others with their voice, Wampus Cats despise all men, but especially holy men, priests, and shamans, who they seek to kill in retribution for their fate.
Dang.
Oh, intense. So we're talking about the Wampus Cat, and doing the research and looking into it, I think I made like a little pop culture connection. I don't know if there is anything to it, but I wanted to share with you guys. I'm going to send you guys a picture of a creature.
I gotta grab my phone. I'm walking away, but I'll be right back.
Okay. So I'm going to send it to the chat we have so you guys can see it. And Eli, you can throw this on the screen for the people out there.
All right.
So you can see it. It's called a Banth.
A Banth?
A Banth. And it's basically a multi-legged lion creature from a book series, John Carter of Mars by Edgar Rice Burroughs.
Oh. Whoa.
And and so in John Carter, it was originally published in 1912, which is interesting. Because it's around that time where it seems to be people talking about Wampus Cats. It's the story of John Carter. He's a Confederate soldier during Civil War who's like mining for gold. He starts getting attacked, I think by a tribe of Indians, and he runs into a cave and he just magically gets transported to Mars. But on Mars, he finds that like the air is breathable and he's like a little stronger and a little faster because like the gravitation's a little off. And there's different races of Martians that he kind of teams up and has adventures with. And there's like these giant green 4-armed monsters that ride banths, and he kind of teams up with them. And so I remember, and it's funny because I remember in the 90s, I had a toy set of, they didn't do John Carter, they did Tarzan of Mars toys. It was like a failed TV cartoon they were trying to do. And there was a play set that came with little versions of banths. So I remember having a little tiger with like 6 to 8 legs on it. And I was like, oh, this sounds like a Wampus Cat.
You knew about the Wampus Cat before you knew the Wampus Cat was a thing.
Yeah. And this takes me into something that I hadn't thought of the Banth first. I had originally thought of this creature, which is called a Nizu. It only has 4 legs. I thought it had 6 in the movie. But the reason I want to bring it up is because the movie it's from is called Attack of the Clones. the little lion tiger creature that attacks Obi-Wan and Anakin in the Colosseum.
Oh, the Colosseum.
Yeah. And so I'd like to think that, Star Wars has a little bit of connective tissue with maybe John Cart of Mars. And speaking of connective tissue, we hope to shed some open as we take it into the Cryptid Coliseum.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Okay, I will preface this as I prefaced it before we started recording. I feel bad about this cryptid battle, and just bear with me, I guess.
Hey, listen, man, it's time to get transgressive.
Maybe I was working through some things. I don't know, but
working some demons out.
Okay, so here we go. It doesn't begin or end in the typical way. Whose shirt is this, and why is it? Anyways,
That's why we can't have nice things.
the Wampus cat prowls a mountain. Thunder rolls in from the distance as it stops to take in the beauty of the eastern Appalachian wilderness before a storm. As the first dribbles of rain begin to fall, the Wampus cat lithely walks into the forest, making hardly a sound. Dude, it's like a Thomas Cole painting. Anyways, as it meanders deeper into the forest, it becomes dark, but uncustomarily dark. It activates its bright eyes, scanning the forest like two bright flashlights. Everything seems fine, but yet there is no sound. No birds of the air, no frogs of the nearby creek. Something is wrong, but what? The Wampus cat lowers itself, awaiting to strike at any moment at anything. A huge, overwhelming light beams down. Tribal drums fill the sky, and a slight pinching sensation on the back of its neck. Cheers fill the forest. The last thing the Wampus sees is an arm reaching for it from the light above. It's still black, but a distant cheering fills Wampus's ears. Where is it? How did she get here? It slowly starts to come to, or she slowly starts to come to, opening her eyes, and she sees a light at the end of the tunnel. In its head, it hears a metallic voice, go towards the light, and she knows she must. So Wampus starts to walk towards it. A gate begins to open. Do the sound. And Wampus steps out into the desert arena. It's in a huge bowl with thousands of spectators cheering. What is this place? Wampus just wants to go back to the peaceful ridge where it lives. On the other side of the Colosseum, another gate opens. Barreling out is a hideous reptilian man beast. It roars at Wampus and chases her with bloodlust. Wampus dodges a swipe, then another and another. She is too nimble for the lizard man escape or swamp, but for how long? She needs to make an attack, and now. She runs to the wall of the Colosseum, runs up it, and does a backflip, using her claws to tear out one of the lizard man's eyes. It screams in pain and chases her with a renewed anger. She runs fast, stops quick, and manages to get on his backside and claws him from the base of his neck down to the top of his tail. Blood oozes out everywhere, and every movement it makes exacerbates the wound. She runs fast again, heading for another wall, preparing for another move, when she is yanked back by her tail, hurled through the air, and slammed onto the ground. The adrenaline didn't let her rest as she got up quick, but before she could move, she is grabbed in one hand by the lizard man. It presses its claws into her sides, and she realizes now how this is going to play out. What was I thinking? She hisses in anger and escapes his grasp, but it doesn't matter much. Blood was splashing out of her sides and soaking into the sand floor of the Colosseum. The crowd is going crazy, and for the first time since the fight began, she could hear them chanting. The lizard man kicks her over, and she falls limply. This is now the end. Fear nor adrenaline could get her to move. Her paws that so nimbly moved across mountainous passes now struggled hollowly in the thin air. The lizard man growled. Oh my goodness. The lizard man growled as she moved in for the kill. She tried once more, but it was for naught, as the lizard man tore her spine from her body. She marveled at the scarlet color of blood shining radiantly in the sunlight as the life left her body. The end.
You want to talk some things out, Eli? Are you doing okay?
I like wrote it.
You want to unpack that?
It was like 20 minutes before we had to record, and I was like, I don't have time to rewrite this.
It was beautiful. It was sad, poetic.
It was poignant, brutal. You know, it was like French extreme cinema, man by dog, if you will. Shocking, to say the least.
We've never seen it from that perspective.
You're right.
What is it like to be inside the Colosseum and feel those feelings as you die?
Jesus.
I mean, we've been with the audience multiple times when they've been burned to death, but now we can see from the cryptid point of view.
Yeah. Wow. Well.
Sorry, everyone. It doesn't end on a high note.
It's okay. You know what? It's okay. It'll be okay. We're gonna be okay. It's okay. But thank you everyone for listening to today's episode and joining us for the discussion about the Wampus Cat. Who do we want to thank today, Eli?
Today we are thanking Kat Hildreth.
Cat, what coincidence. Oh my gosh.
Kat. Yes.
Yo.
As far as I can tell, it's short for Catherine. They've been with us since April 8th, 2021. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much, Cat.
Catawampus.
Support Cat. Can we call you Catawampus? Just kidding. Oh man. Well, thanks so much, guys. We will see you next week.
Yeah, we're gonna set sail, and don't forget the Wampas, Womps Cat.
We want to thank you guys for listening to Cryptid Campfire. We really appreciate it, and we'd appreciate it even more if you left us a rating on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It helps us rank, and more people can find us and join the campfire. If you haven't yet, consider following us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. That's at Cryptid Campfire on all three. Be sure to check out our website, cryptidcampfire.com, where you can find campfire t-shirts and other merch, as well as our weekly blog, expanding upon what we talk about in the episodes. If you've done all that, consider subscribing to our Patreon page. $5 a month gets you access to exclusive episodes and wallpapers that haven't been released anywhere else. For the price of a coffee, you will be directly helping us make this show the best it can be. If you want to follow our hosts, you can find their personal profiles on Instagram at Jasmine May With, that's JasmineMaewith, at Alex Daikaiju, that's at AlexDaikaiju, and at the Eli Watson. Thank you everyone, and see you next week.
This podcast is a part of Straight Up Strange Productions. Discover more shows like this one at straightupstrange.com.